Now it's Catherine O'Riordan, private practitioner, and her talk is to be or not to be adult. That is the question.
So yes, thank you. To be or not to be an adult, that is the question, a title which evokes Hamlet's reflection on the challenges, sufferings and choices, at least in principle, each person faces between the two fixed points of life and birth and death. As a way of responding to the conference theme, I'm inviting us to look again at the question of what it means to be a psychologically mature adult. My belief is that this concept, in its everyday form, can be useful in positioning ourselves as therapists to help our clients gain some personal agency by helping them grapple with both their internal world and the specifics of their external realities. I believe this stance supports genuine thought and supports increased agency and action. So I'm a developmentally based, relationally focused, humanistic, integrative psychotherapist in private practice in Nottingham, which is in the middle of the UK. And my reflections reflect this experience near practice-based perspective. According to the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapies Public Perception Survey, nearly a third of UK adults have sought help from a counsellor or psychotherapist in the last 12 months. That's a lot of people. This statistic supports my experience that the demographics of who is accessing therapy has changed, especially since the pandemic. And here's a little bit of a taste of what I've experienced in terms of clients, that they feel bombarded with external stimuli. They feel overwhelmed by the competing demands on their attention and resources. That they invest most of their self-discipline and willpower in work. And as a consequence, they have little energy and self-discipline left over for relationships and genuine self-care. Clients feel under-resourced to meet the challenges required to navigate their life. Many people accessing therapy experience a profound sense of inadequacy and a lack of agency. And in their anguish, for many clients, the external factors relating to how they feel may become minimized or completely overlooked. This can lead to self-defeating types of introspection and acting out. Genuine spontaneity, understood to include elements of reflection and personal choice in the moment, becomes highly limited. James Davis, in his book Sedated, 2021, written during the pandemic, sheds light on this pervasive and insidious tendency for the individual to locate the source of their distress entirely within themselves. Davis describes how the social and economic climate of late capitalism in the UK has medicalised, marketised and depoliticised our emotional distress. And he argues that one of the main reasons medicalising our distress can cause harm and be detrimental to society is that once people identify with being mentally ill or having a mental health problem, it becomes harder for them to think of themselves as healthy participants in normal life or as being in control of their own fate. And as a result, they subtly relinquish parts of their agency. And as Winnicott, who's become a little bit of a continuing theme today, wrote, full maturity of the individual is not possible in an immature or ill social setting. From my perspective, our present societal context continually threatens to knock us off our developmental trajectory towards psychological health or maturity as an adult. If then nearly a third of UK adults have sought help from a counsellor or psychotherapist in the past 12 months, what type of therapy could be right? For psychotherapy to get it right, I'm picturing us as helping each client navigate their life as an adult, not as an ego state, incidentally, as an adult. A focus on what I am calling growing the adult may be a good fit for our times. Working with this concept supports the individual to begin the work of navigating the many complexities of becoming a mature, psychologically healthy grown-up in all the specificities and limitations of their life, whilst recognizing all their interdependency. And as Freud said, we cannot alter the circumstances and events of an individual's life. But as Freud put it, with a mental life that has been restored, the client will be better armed against unhappiness. Now, I'm aware of time, so I'm going to skip a little bit here. So my picture is a picture of growing the adult, which has precedent. For example, Jung wrote, "The greatest and most important problems in life are all, in a sense, insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown." And Karen Horney speaks in a similar vein. "We cannot cure the wrong course which the development of a person has taken. We can only assist him to gradually outgrow his difficulties so that his development may assume a more constructive force." What then does it mean to be a psychologically mature adult? Both Winnicott and Karen Horney have complementary suggestions. Winnicott says, in health, which is almost synonymous with maturity, the adult is able to identify with society without too great a sacrifice of personal spontaneity. But of course, he has that caveat that nobody can become mature or sane in a sick society. According to Horney, we want to help the patient to find themselves, and with that, the possibility of working towards self-realization. And I think by self-realization, it's not too far away to think of what Karen Horney meant here, along the lines of what it is to be an engaged, mature adult within a social setting. Horney says the criterion for which we cultivate or reject in ourselves lies in the question, is a particular attitude or drive inducive or obstructive to my human growth? And we might extend that out to say, is a particular attitude or drive or action inducive or constructive or obstructive to the growth or well-being of others? Here I see Horney presenting us with a criterion which can be used with consistent thought and reflection to inform our internal compass, a way of helping us weigh up, make choices and take action to become towards becoming a mature adult. From a more sociological perspective, becoming an adult has been traditionally associated with certain milestones, such as completing education, becoming financially independent, working full-time, living independently, getting married and having children. For many people in the UK, the significance of traditional milestones is no longer something they can feel they can take for granted or even perhaps to aspire to. And even where belief in these milestones does persist, the timing for these accomplishments tends to become much later and later. This changing landscape around adult milestones contributes to many clients' feelings of inadequacy, uncertainty, and immaturity, and the lack of agency and spontaneity. A recent book by Moya Sana around becoming an adult, she remarks, what then are we to make of this hybrid, both and neither, not quite grown-up state? As psychotherapists and as human beings, we will have observed how people occupy more than one psychological state at a time. According to Byrne, phenomenologically, an ego state can be described as a coherent system of feelings related to a subject. It is well observed that in certain situations, human beings recollect feelings and understandings they initially had at a much younger age, so that psychologically, from a state perspective, they become associated within this younger state. It's like our footing in our more here and now state as an adult, as a grown-up, we lose our footing and find ourselves feeling, thinking and reacting like a psychologically much younger version of ourselves. What I'm suggesting is that if this blueprint needs to be, we need to press the refresh button on this. So unless biologically mature adults are helped to notice and update their conceptions and expectations around what it means for them to become a healthy, mature adult, these archaic perceptions continue to unconsciously provide a viscerally experienced blueprint. This then provides helping an individual to notice, track and investigate this phenomenon has proved very helpful in helping clients realign themselves, becoming more associated to themselves as a here and now adult, whilst tolerating other states and elements of themselves which remain archaic. This then provides a platform for purposefully navigating life on a trajectory towards becoming psychologically mature and healthy as an adult. When I have asked people what it means for them to become an adult, they often talk about feeling more competent, about being able to sort things out, about being able to sort out things in a crisis. But they don't readily associate being an adult with feeling vulnerable or needing help, or with doing the wrong thing, or experiencing shame, or reaching out to others. Their view of what it is to be an adult is often idealized, or it is shaped by the disappointments as children and or adolescents of parents and other grown-ups who have fallen short as human beings. Helping clients to differentiate between behaving like a psychologically mature adult and feeling like an adult is useful because, of course, behaving and feeling like an adult do not always coincide. Unless we press the refresh button on these deep-seated fantasies and begin to appreciate that adults are human and always subject to the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, then we are destined to fail to grasp our nascent freedom to grow up into a psychologically mature and healthy adult. As psychotherapists, we have both conscious and unconscious preconceptions and expectations around what we are seeking to provide as a service. These shape the way we perceive our clients and inform our choice of clinical interventions. This paper argues that a way of perceiving and positioning ourselves clinically that has faith in the nascent capacity for individuals to grow towards psychological health and maturity as adults. Growing the adult, as I put it, is one of three interconnected points of focus, which to connect together contribute to the named person becoming more able to reflect, think, make judgments and choices based on this inner compass. That's it.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions, thoughts, comments?
I'm tempted to say, was it Winnicott said there's no such thing as a baby? I'm tempted to say there's no such thing as an adult. Like what is an adult,
Well, I guess what I'm saying is it's quite a good question to explore, and often it's quite a good point of contact with people because it's a word that most people will use, adult and grown up and maturity and things like that. And it's a starting point that can sometimes help reposition ourselves and people into thinking about nascent agency as a starting point for exploring their role and their place within the particularities of their world.
Can I just follow on from that? Because I thought, Catherine, you said something really important about Winnicott, this idea that you can't become an adult in some societies. So I think that kind of links things up a bit, doesn't it? I mean, there might be no such thing as an adult without thinking of the sort of society in which someone can become an adult. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I was referring to Davis's point about, sort of like we are pathologizing often ordinary distress to such a degree that we lose all potential for agency. And it's not a view of like having agency or no agency. I believe our job as psychotherapists is to be able to sort of like clear some of the ground so that people can start to sort of like reposition themselves within themselves in spite of all their woundedness and their historical experience, if you like, the baggage that surrounds them, that within the context, I think perhaps like Merleau-Ponty, within the absolute givens of their experience, they can try and grasp, if you like, success out of failure in some respects. They can grasp some agency.
It's funny because I was thinking that you know, when you talk about agency, I don't think I understand and follow that, but I think you were going somewhere slightly different as well when you were talking about you know, being an adult is part of being able to sort of recognize one's own vulnerability and ask for help and stuff like that. Seems to me to go a slightly different way, and I think maybe, and I find it a more interesting way, but that's just my sort of thing about what it might mean to be an adult.
I think they're all of a piece though, aren't they? Because I mean, we experience, phenomenologically, we experience ourselves as having, as I said right at the beginning, sort of like choices. We experience things impinging, to use a Winnicottian phrase, on us. And we do need to reach out into, we have to question, we have to think. But quite often, my experience of people is that they become so regressed, if you like, and so unable to think that they spend most of their time ruminating rather than thinking or compulsively acting out. So that, again, it's a way of trying to conceive part of our job anyway, as helping people to say, well, you have this capacity, and it's embedded within the concept of maturity or being an adult, that it's not an absolute capacity, it's a very relative one, and sometimes it's quite ephemeral, but surely that's what we enjoy as human beings, is these moments where we actually make choices that are based on our best interests and other people's best interests, which are mutually reinforcing. I guess it also raises quite a lot of questions about the role of the ethical within our practice as psychotherapists, the role of the moral universe, and whether we constantly try and sidestep it because we're frightened of taking a line.
I wanted to, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but just as a sort of comment, really, if in this kind of becoming an adult, it's about somehow feeling that you can find a place in this world, that, you know, there are other ways of doing it. How do we hold that with a world that is, you know, falling apart in so many ways? You know, what are we aiming to be more, feel that we have some agency over? I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Winnicott really does talk about, you know, we inherit society as we find it, and that we have some sort of responsibility for the modification or improvement of society as we find it. And I guess that's it, isn't it? Is that we find ourselves as individuals with the need to take appropriate responsibility, but a lot of people nowadays feel utterly overwhelmed with a sense of responsibility, and that overwhelm undermines their ability to take any agency quite often, both for themselves and for other people. What maybe we would call depression or alienation or anomie.
On that note, we should probably break now until 3 o'clock, but thank you so much, and see everybody back here in 10 minutes, just under.